Well, what are you guys going to talk about? Surely some of you got drunk over the weekend. You don't want to talk about the merits of drinking. Many of you are still high. You want to talk about perhaps, yes. Well, you watch a video or the audio, one of them or all of them, on the module, and hopefully you'll find something interesting. It'll bring up some ideas about something, and hopefully from there a question will be inspired. And then just, write the question down, tell me why it's interesting or important. Does that make sense? It's kind of like you go out on a date, and as you're driving home, all of a sudden you say, oh, I should have asked him this question. And then because you find your time and your youth and your energy and your future important, and you know that human beings oftentimes forget things, you write the question down so you don't forget, so next time you see him, you ask the question. And that's basically what you do with the audios. Yeah, Jamila, right?
Yes. Is there really a right or wrong question to ask? Is there really a right question to ask? I read the modules as well, and I don't know. I answered to the best of my ability from the video that I saw. That was the first one. And then I noticed it was I only got 15 points for it. So I'm like, is there, what do you consider a 25-point question?
That's a really, really good question. So, you have children?
I have one 26-year-old.
Okay. So imagine when he was 2, or maybe 5, or maybe 10, or even now at the age of 26. And I'm just going to create a story. It may all be wrong. And sometimes you look at your son and you say, what a loser. Well, is there a right or a wrong life? Well, people do what they need to do where they are in life. In other words, a 2-year-old has no choice but to scream. A 20-year-old hopefully will not scream, but maybe will write his ideas down. A 40-year-old will kind of just mind his own business and say, this too shall pass. Is there a right and a wrong? Well, really no, because where you are ultimately determines how you're going to express yourself. But as a mother, as someone who's been seasoned by life, pushed around by life, knows a few things about money, about relationships, about energy, about youth, about time. Hi, Kendra. You look at your son and you say, don't waste time. And your son may look at you and say, Mom, there is no good or right approach to time. I'm just living life. And you say, son, listen, I know you're living life, but where this life is going to take you is in the gutter. Or maybe paradise. Who the hell knows? So for your son, there are no right or wrong answer. He's just living out his life. For you, who's been there, who's done that, and you have kind of suffered some consequences because of perhaps lack of information, knowledge, experience, you kind of look at your son and you impose the wrath of motherhood upon him. So when I read a question that comes from the psyche or a mind of an 18-year-old, who doesn't read very much, who doesn't think very much, whose life is just up in the air, is that question good for the 20-year-old? Yeah, for the 20-year-old it is. But when I read it, does it make sense to me? No. Is it meaningful? No. Am I going to give 25? No. Is it subjective? Yeah. Am I biased? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, does your son call you biased in regards to certain judgments that you have on him? Absolutely. Are those educated biases? Yeah, they're actually life-saving. Yeah. Thank you.
So,
Derek.
do you think biases are good? No.
Well, if they come out of a good amount of reflection, experience, and observation, yeah.
Do you think it's important to learn about past animals to better understand animals that currently exist today?
If they're edible, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, Dan?
You had mentioned in a previous class, one of the lectures, that asking a question you don't understand, like uses the question. How do you understand the questions you're trying to ask?
Can you repeat your question?
So the previous lecture you had mentioned that asking a question you don't fully understand the question. How do you understand the question?
You know, I think we occupy 3, 4, 5 different stages in life. And you could be 18 and you could occupy a higher level. You could be 45 and you could occupy a lower level. So let me give you a couple of examples. Imagine you were kicked out of your house and you have no place to live. And so your question is going to revolve around, is there a place I can stay the night? That question is very practical. That question is something you can see and touch and taste, in a very intimate way. You go home and your companion screams at you. And you want to know the reasons, okay? And so you kind of look at him or you hear him say, what is wrong with you? Let's sit and talk. You take a nap, you wake up from the nap, and all of a sudden you feel as if your life doesn't mean anything. You don't mean anything. Everything you've done in your life doesn't mean anything. And then you say, well, what am I doing? And if you look at these 3 or 4 or 5 different questions, you realize they stand at different levels in life. There are certain questions you actually know why they came about, how they came about, where you need to go to kind of figure out what the answers are. It's something that some 3,000 years ago, someone like Socrates has mentioned, which is, if you want milk, for example, if you open the fridge and you open a box of cereal and you want to have Cheerios with some milk, you open the fridge and you realize you don't have milk. And you say to yourself, where can I go to get some milk? Well, there is 7-Eleven, there's the Shell gas station, there is Safeway, there is Costco. Okay? Or maybe you'll come to realize that, well, you have no clean clothes. Where is the closest laundromat? Okay? Then you get to a place in life where you say, I wonder what I need to do with my life. And these are questions that you can't find the answers at Safeway. Not even coming to Lanier, UC Berkeley, or Stanford. These are what we call existential questions. Okay? Now, I'm not quite sure how we get to the existential questions. I mean, one of the nice things about just being us is for the first 50, 60, 70 years of your life and my life, we ask ridiculous, cheesy questions. I mean, they're important questions. I mean, a couple of months, someone in this class is going to give birth to a brand new baby. Healthcare, that's a good question. Diapers, great questions. Can I live in a studio still or should I move into a 2-bedroom? Great question. What sort of a neighborhood do I want to raise my kid? Another great question. Do I need a stable job to create a stable life for my newborn? Another great question. Okay? How do I raise my kid so that he could become a Malcolm X or a Mahatma Gandhi or a Jesus Christ? That's a completely different question. And that question is going to be very, very difficult to find the answer to. And what usually happens is, if you're asked, the more profound and in-depth your question is, what usually happens to us is that you go back to the things you're familiar with. Okay? It's kind of like the abusive relationship. You don't really know what to do with being alone. You don't really know what to do with being, depressed or some extent sad. So what you do is you call back the person who abused you or who is just no good for your life. Because, loneliness is just too much. Depression is just too much. At least when you're with someone who abuses you, you know who the villain is. you know. So as you move up into your own, I suppose, psychological maturity, you're less able to access the root of the question. And other people are able to answer you either. So you'll experience more loneliness, I suppose, to some extent. If I was to give you a different example, there was this very young, attractive woman who used to come to our car wash. This is like 40 years ago. And she would always complain that there are no good men. You know, and 40 years ago, people were different than they are today. It took her about 30 or 40 years to come to realize that most of the men who walked into her life were actually quite decent. She was the rotten apple. And once she figured this out, she packed her stuff and moved back home to Iran. She realized that that's the only place she can go where she can be a bit more digestible for other people. But it took her some time. Men are not really good at this, and most women aren't, but some are really good. Women who walk away from a long-term relationship, if and when they're very, very devastated, they have a tendency of locking themselves up in the psychological cave. They just sit there, depressed. They want to figure out why this happened to them. And women have an expiration date, unlike men, especially in a youth culture such as this, where your looks matter, your age matters, everything about who and what you are matters, right? And add to the fact that biologically, there's a certain limit, you know, a point you can just live your life before your body screams for a child, and you may not really be able to have a child after a certain age. So there's an expiration date. So when a woman has injected a good amount of hope and dreams in a relationship that doesn't pan out the way she wants it to, she has a tendency going somewhere dark into herself to try to examine her life, the sort of mistakes she's made. And then she won't date for a long, long time. When she comes out, she is ready. And then for the first time, she's able to ask all the right questions when she's on a date. About the guy's parents, about his education, about his money, all that stuff. These are things that she couldn't have done at the age of 18 or 19 or 25 or 30. And if your question next is, well, how can one learn to ask those questions at the age of 18 as opposed to 40? I have no idea. I think all of us have to be beaten up by life a few times to be able to get to a place where we can ask right questions. And you can't get them from books. And you can't get them by going to school. And you can't get them by going to therapy. I think the saying that you have in one of the Gospels is very accurate, that you can't make the grass grow by pulling it. You know, some things about human psyche just has to come out organically. You know, I know your name. I just don't remember it. Isabel.
Do you believe that it's possible for somebody to live a content life without experiencing hardship to a
No.
no?
No.
Do you think that do you think that people who experience less hardship are experiencing life in a less full way?
You know, it matters very little what life gives you. What is most important is how well you're able to process them. And the way you process them, for the most part, has to do with the software given to you by the environment in which you live. For the past many, many thousands of years, fathers would go out the door and they would never come back because we lived in a warrior society. People fight all the time. Your father goes out in the morning, doesn't come back home. Your mother looks at you and says, Dad is dead. His head was chopped off. There are no therapists. There are no psychologists. People just suck it up, and they live their life. Here, your father is right there. He just doesn't buy you a toy, and you need therapy for the rest of your life. So, are people different now than they were like 200 years ago? They're different because the culture is different, because culture creates different narratives. And you and I consume stories, like the way you consume food and then you have diarrhea. You consume cultural stories and then you have diarrhea in the form of like psychic tensions, depression, loneliness. Andrew. Sorry. Anyone else before we go home? Spike? Nothing? Wolf? I'm sorry.
I know you're not, Erica.
Erica, yeah.
So do you think it was a good idea for us to come to school today with the protests going on? Like, is it a better idea that we came to get our education? Although they're saying, stay home, but go to school.
What's the
Is
protest?
it a better choice to go?
I don't know the protests.
Oh, so it's like basically a day without an immigrant and like allies to show that we're not spending. Yeah.
You mean for immigration stuff? I don't think it matters very much that I'm a citizen, and I've been here for about 40 years, most of my life. The way I look, especially now with the beard, they can easily attach a terrorist, give me a label, cuff me, and throw me somewhere. Maybe send me to Texas for a few days. And then when they realize I'm in fact a citizen, they'll look at me and say, well, you have to buy your own ticket home. Well, you guys brought me here, now I have to spend my own money? And the answer is yes. All I can tell you from personal experience as an immigrant who once had an illegal status is that you should exercise cautious. Be very, very cautious. Where you go, just in case you see cops, just walk the other way. Just pay attention to things. And don't be an idiot.
So I'm also asking, like, as an ally, would it have been better for people to stay home to show, like,
As a what?
as an ally,
Oh, ally to the protesters.
you have the privilege to do so somewhere. But
In 1979, when I went back home from India, there were mass movements every single day for the next, a few months until the regime was toppled. I'm from Iran. The Shah's empire had kind of dominated the country for almost a century or so. The Britain had a good hand in our politics. The English did, the French did, and later on America did. What usually happens, I think, in any life is that all of us in this class have a good amount of discontent, misery, unhappiness. Life has only one function. You wake up in the morning with a good amount of hopes and dreams. You come to class and I piss on all of them. If I don't do it, your boss will. If your boss doesn't, as you're walking around the lake, someone looks at you in a very mean-spirited way, or maybe you'll see a cop having pulled over some guy and they're just beating the crap out of him. So there are lots of things out there that can ruin your day, your entire day, if not your entire week, okay? And given that you and I have no choice but to burden not only the psychic tension that lives inside us, but also what we see in society. Minimum wage is just way too minimum. People are mean-spirited. We have emotions we don't really know how to articulate and express them. You take classes you don't like. You're in a relationship that's dead. But out of desperation, you have no choice but to be in it. Money is tight. Kids are being raised in just not such a good way. Environment is bad for them. There are not very many good, positive things out there. So you have to carry a lot of stuff inside you. And so what happens is revolutions or protests are like the spark that happens, as it happened to us. You have tens of thousands of people every single day, you know, and the truth is we would have military trucks all of a sudden coming into our belly, you know, soldiers coming out with machine guns, opening fire. Not a single one of us were frightened because you're fighting for a cause. Time passes, the dust settles. You've buried a lot of people. Parents have died, kids have died, people are in mourning, and now you have a new regime. And you realize things are far worse than they were. And what you realize is that the public, you and I'm not talking about the Malcolms and the Martins and the Mahatma Gandhis. These are at the very top of human hierarchy, okay? But for the message of Gandhi to come down here and be to some extent applied, you need guinea pigs. You need people like me. Miserable, wretched animals whose lives are going nowhere. And all of a sudden I listen to someone give an inspiring talk. And it moves me. And then it moves you. And then all of a sudden, all of us will walk out of the classroom, we'll go into the quad with our fist raised to the heavens, and we seek justice. It's a great feeling. For the first time in your life, you don't worry about milk or shoes or the Grammys. You don't give a shit about any of those things. You say justice. I don't care about the skin color. I don't care about your orientation. I don't care about anything. I just want justice and fairness for everyone. Now, the problem with any mass movement is that the public, I don't have any real understanding of what justice is. I don't have any real understanding of taxes. You know, I mean, it's great that Canada has to now pay more to the US. It's great. It's one form of justice. But you going out to buying a gallon of milk instead of 4, now you pay 25. But what happens in a mass movement, nobody talks about taxes. Nobody talks about if the minimum wage was to jump from $17 to $25, well, you wouldn't be able to go out and eat. And just in case you want to take your kids out to buy a burger, it's no longer $10. It's $20. And your wages now at work is still $17.25. You know? And if there was like 60% of Americans under the poverty rate or belt, now it's 75, 80%. One of the nice things again about mass movements is that it makes all of us blind for about a week or 2 or 3 or 4. You know, I mean, consider the Occupy movement in Oakland some years ago. I mean, people are inspired. They break into shops, they do nasty things to other people's businesses, all because they're inspired. They're looking for justice. You know, their pictures are taken. The moment of inspiration goes away. You have a cop knocking on your door saying, this is what you did. Now you got to pay the price. Was it worth it? In some ways, at that moment, yes. When time passes, the answer is no. I can't tell you how many Persians lost their lives in the 1980s. All because someone said, go out there and fight for a just cause. Nothing. I think before you take your sorry behind out to protest and to become one with those who are suffering, I think it's great, but you should also pay attention, very close attention to where you are in your life. Do you have children? Do you have sick parents? How old are you? Do you have Medicare? Do you have all the basic things of life? You know, if you don't, stay in classes. Do the best you can to get your A, B's, or C's. Go to a 4-year school. Once you have power, then if you want to give your time to other people, do so. And I am speaking from a position of someone who's been there, also someone who's lost a lot of time doing just ridiculous things. And now that I have less time ahead of me than behind me, you know, I become a Scrooge when it comes to my time and my energy. So I don't give it away freely. It's okay. Is it? Yeah. Elise? Elsie? Elise?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I was going to ask, Is there such a thing as like a good philosopher?
Yeah.
Like they know all their stuff? And does that make like a good philosopher?
So, are you an alcoholic?
No.
I am. So let me tell you how it works. Let me tell you what a really, really good alcoholic looks like. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. When I was very, very young, my parents' life was very, very difficult. And my father didn't know what to do with all of his anger. So he started drinking. I was only 2 or 3 or 4. He would come home drunk, and then he would pounce on my mom. He would slap me a couple times, beat my brother a couple times. My sister is 8 years younger than I am, so when she was born, she got a taste of that abuse as well a little bit. Did I understand what it means to be a 25-year-old guy getting married to someone you don't like? Not being ready for children yet, enjoying sex very much? No. I'm 5. What the hell do I know about life? Nothing. Do I know what it means to wake up at 3 in the morning, go work for the oil refinery till like midnight, come back home exhausted, and there it is, your wife who's nagging and kids who are screaming? No, I don't understand any of those things. In other words, as a 5-year-old, you don't understand the pressures that's on the back of a 25-year-old. Okay? And then you also have a 25-year-old who's not really educated as to how they should deal with the difficulties of life. The culture says, well, you're lonely, masturbate. You're bored, well, get high. You're angry, well, find someone's face and put your fist to it. Okay? So the more impoverished the culture and the more impoverished your physical environment, the more poor you are as a human being, and so you do things that you ought not do. But because you don't have those narratives or those components, you just behave like a little kid. Okay. And so, what are kids? Beautiful, wonderful sponges. You just soak up. Oh, so when you're angry, scream. You know? And just in case there is no one to listen to your screaming, well, your dad has a couple of bottles of beer in the fridge. Why don't you go drink it? So I started drinking when I was 7. I know. It was a little too late for me. I should have started the moment I was born. Now, you drink and you drink and you drink and you drink. Now, while I was drunk, I went to school. I got some crummy degrees. You know, got married, had some kids. I did exactly what my father did. Until one day I come home and there is no one there. So I began to drink more. But I became much more clever. In addition to drinking, I began to smoke the good stuff. I was like high, walking with Jesus Christ on the clouds. See. Then one day I realized I just woke up in my bed, and my bed was wet. I had peed, I had vomited, all sorts of nasty things. Now, one of the things you understand about being a drunk and hitting a dead end is that you find yourself and your life completely empty, hollow, meaningless. And you're forced, not because you want to, you're forced to sit back and examine, to look at it. And what you see horrifies you. Now, you try to fix your life, but habits are difficult to overcome. If you come to my office and you say, Amir, I want to do philosophy, the first question I'm going to ask you is about your life. I want to figure out what your habits are. And if it's in my capacity to get rid of those habits. Because I don't want to play this push and pull game with you. If I realize that your habits are really deep rooted, I'm going to say, you know, Elise, I really like you, but go somewhere else. Okay. So I assumed, wrongly of course, that just by myself, I'm able to overcome my addictions and habits, not just addiction to alcohol and drugs, but addiction to certain emotions, addiction to certain ways of thinking and being. You know, just because one of our car washes was next to an AA center, and what all these nice, kind people had to say is, I no longer drink, but now I smoke constantly. Or I no longer drink or smoke, but I go to these porn places all the time. Okay.
So it's an endless cycle of addiction.
And compulsive behavior, sure.
Like once you shake one addiction, it goes to another far worse addiction.
Yeah.
Or like lesser.
Right. And one of the reasons we do it is because it's familiar, it's comfortable, and it's safe. I don't know what to do with just sitting on my ass and saying, Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. It's just too much aloneness. It's too much calmness, too much rest. I need chaos because I know what chaos looks like. Okay? And so once I realized that any kind of addiction, overcoming it is going to be enormously difficult, I began to sought some help. I went to AA. Okay? And it took me about 20 years to sober up. Once I became sober, and you don't just wake up one morning and say, I'm fine now. It doesn't work that way. You encounter emotions you don't want to witness, and you don't want to feel, and you don't want to be around. Regret, remorse, you scream, you cry, you look at the way you treated your wife, your kids, your parents, your life, your youth, your liver, your kidneys. Okay? So you have like this hell. You live in hell for a long, long time until you come to a place of acceptance. You say, okay, you know what? I did A, B, C, D because of all these different reasons. Right? And then one morning after 20 years, I get a call. It was from some director saying, listen, I know you've been coming to our meetings for a long time. I know you've recovered. Do you have time to kind of lead a group of people who want to sober up? I said, absolutely. Now, what makes me a good alcoholic, Elise? What makes you a good alcoholic is not my ability to consume alcohol. It's, first of all, my ability to consume alcohol, then being forced to realize what alcohol did to my body, to my emotional life, to my mental life, to my spiritual life, what it did to my wife, to my kids, what I did to my parents, what I did to money. I'm an alcoholic because I was forced to look at everything about my life. But that wasn't just the end of it. Because after all that you see about yourself and feel about yourself, well, you need to be able to express yourself well. If you've ever been in pain due to a breakup in a romantic relationship, your friends will come and ask you, so how you doing? I mean, they see that you're a complete mess, and you try to put your emotions into language only to realize it doesn't work. You're fumbling left and right. In the end, you just give up and you say, don't ask me, please. And you go to your room, you lock the door, you turn off the lights, and you just cry. So it's going to take you a long time to be able to put your emotions into language. In a way, you know how you go in front of a mirror and you see yourself and you say, okay, I need to fix my hair, fix my nose, fix my lips, fix my outfit, okay? And language does that. As you speak, you can hear yourself and you say, okay, you know what? I'm not expressing that particular emotion in this particular vehicle, i.e. language in a proper way. So you have to do more practice, okay? Once you get there, then something really interesting happens. Now you find yourself in the middle of this room with 50 people looking at you. Now you have emotions you never had. James Baldwin had said something interesting, that if you really want to have a conversation with someone, you need to be able to reveal yourself. Because oftentimes we hide behind masks. You know, I ask you how you're doing, you say, well, let me tell you what Plato said. I don't give a shit what Plato said. I'm asking you the question. You know, so don't hide behind identities, don't hide behind ideas. Just come out and tell me what a piece of shit you are. That's the starting point. Okay. And you realize 50 people are watching you. Now you have emotions you never had before because now you realize what these people are going through. Okay, you become nervous, your voice begins to shake. Even though you've had a lot of practice, you fumble and you look at your audience and they're confused. They have no idea what you're talking about. So it takes some time. So a good alcoholic is someone who's gone through all that stuff, sees alcohol, goes through the temptations, okay? The memory of his or her past comes forth, wills him or herself away from the alcohol. You have no idea how difficult it is to get rid of your alcoholic friends because those are the only people you hang out with. You have no idea how to get rid of your anger issues because those are the only issues, those are the only emotions you have companions as. You know. I've never drank, by the way. It was just a story. But the point I'm trying to make is what makes a good philosopher? The word philosophy is Greek. It comes from two words, love and wisdom. Okay? If you can love something the right way, anything, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't need to be Plato. It doesn't need to be the Bible. If you're able to love, if you have the patience to sit by the thing that you love for about 10, 15, 20 years, wisdom will be given to you. Jamie? No. Jamila. You could have no wisdom from her when she had a son, when he was 2, or 3, or 4, or 10, or 20. Now go ask her. Go tell her you want to get pregnant. She'll probably slap you. That's the outcome of wisdom. It's not child's play. You just can't go out there, have sex, and get pregnant and say, I'm going to make it. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, please don't have children. So as long as you love something, the people we're going to talk about in this class, they are philosophers in the sense that they kind of looked at certain parts of society. Some of them looked at certain parts of politics. Some are like Jesus. They looked at the human spirit within the context of a physical life. And they said, listen, you know, the way you're living your life, you're not going to get anywhere. It's just going to be misery, left and right. If you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, maybe you'll be lucky. So different people in different stations, occupied with different things, will give you a different wisdom. Now, the wisdom of Jesus is not going to be good for you. I don't give a shit what Jesus says. As a 25-year-old woman, the wisdom you need is stay in school. Because physical life demands money, rent, food, clothing, transportation. Romantic relationships, they demand money. And in a few years, you're going to get old, ugly, smelly. You need a savings account. You need a home that you own. You need a solid relationship. And if you can't think well, none of those things you'll have. If you graduate from all of those things, then if you want to follow the path of Plato, fine.
Do you think now people are like more open of their issues than in the past? Because
Which is so awful.
they have said in the past that people would show symptoms of PTSD and other issues based off like old diaries. It's just more like they're more aware of it now. So it's just like, are they keeping it like more open now for her to be more?
Can I tell you a story? I don't really know if my story will be in any way related to your question, but let me tell it to you anyways. There is a restaurant in Roseville. It has Chinese food. It's called Fats. There are only two in California, as far as I know. One is in Sacramento and one is in Roseville.
Say the name again, please.
Sorry?
The name of the
Fats.
FAT or PH?
F. Yeah, Fats. So just in case, you're going up to Reno or Tahoe, just stop by Fats, grab yourself some food, and then head your way. Now, they have this bathroom. I mean, they have two. Maybe now they have three. The lighting in the bathroom is very, very, very interesting and very unique. Every time I walk into the bathroom, I look myself in the mirror and I don't see any wrinkles. And my beard looks like all black and my head is like a full head of hair. And I look really, 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 really good. And I can't tell you, I stand there just like worshiping myself for like 10 minutes. And when I go to the table, my parents ask, where have you been? So, oh, well, I went to the bathroom, then I saw Joe Schmo, and we started talking in the stall. And then I go home, And then I go downstairs, my parents' house, to brush my teeth or whatever. And the lighting is so bright. And then I look at myself. And I say, man, you look like shit. I said, how is it possible that at Fats you look so good? When you come home, you look so awful. The less you see and the less you know, the more attractive things are. Now, one of the problems I have with people today, like I walk past by a coffee shop, there's a man or a woman like writing, like rigorously and ferociously. Say, oh, is that your diary? None of your business, fuck off. Okay. And as I'm walking, I say, what exactly are they like writing about? Their boyfriend, their life, their own stuff. I say, man, when you see all of this stuff, what the hell are you going to do with it? There's a reason why we just put junk into our closet and we lock the door. Because the moment you take them out, where are you going to put them? Well, you're going to get rid of the things you're attached to. And it's going to take you like 5 lifetimes to get rid of all the junk. Why do you want to understand everything that lives inside you? It's stupid. The problem with people today is every time they have a fucking feeling about anything, I want to tell you how I feel. Why? Keep it inside yourself. Find a restroom, put in the toilet bowl and flush it down. There is a reason why we like to forget things. There is a reason why we have a certain place in ourselves that we store junk in. Today, everybody wants to bring them out. Next time you go to a coffee shop, just sit next to two people who are dating and just eavesdrop. It's always about shit about their life. It's stupid. It's not like this is the only generation for whom life has been difficult. I mean, look at the people in Palestine. Look at most of the countries in Africa. I mean, 60% of this country is under the poverty line. And people didn't have much, and yet they didn't complain. Life was good, no need for therapy, No HDHD, PSTS, none of those things. People just lived life and they died. Today, nothing. The moment you're born, well, let me tell you how difficult it was being in your belly. Please. Fuck. Majesty. What are you going to name your child? I'm sorry? Arthur. Why? Arthur? What does that mean? Okay.
But I was asking, what's your opinion on Trump trying to stop financial aid? I was in the food stamps and doing the ICE stuff.
What Trump is doing, you said? Do you hear me talk in this class? I think there is something that's common in all of us. I think whenever you have power, there's a part of you that turns into a bully. It's kind of like the question that Jamila had asked about grades. You know, do all people deserve to pass? I think so. I have a problem with the grading system, period. You know, but I'm not going to spend the rest of my life fighting a system that's clogged up. You know, and education is clogged up. You know, this room, I've been in it for about 20 years. No one has ever said anything about coming in and just beautifying a little bit. Making it a bit more attractive, a bit more friendly, a bit more hospitable. I think the only way that power can be tempered, in other words, if you are able to inject a good amount of justice and kindness and compassion into power so that you don't become a complete ass, is that remember that you two shit, kind of like the Shakespearean motto, if you tickle us, we'll laugh. If you cut us, we'll bleed. If you tickle us, we'll laugh. If you betray us, we'll seek revenge. You know, I think what Trump lacks is he's not a very observant human being. And whenever you get some power in your life, even you, whenever you get some power in your life, what happens is there's this stage in you and your relationship with power that you become intoxicated. You become drunk with power. You know? And it takes you a while to realize that you were on the wrong end, and you go to your boyfriend or your girlfriend and you say, listen, I'm sorry, I was wrong. But that stage of intoxication needs to pass until you begin to see that seeing brings about a good amount of humility or understanding inside you, and then you carry your sorry ass to your boyfriend, your companion, and say, listen, I was wrong. You know, I think Trump is not yet at that stage. And most of the people he hires, they're not really at that stage. There is nothing wrong with being a Jesus Christ and exploiting people because it's for their own good. You know, but Danielle and then Jamila. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges and complexities that you face or people when it comes to controlling, navigating your emotions, social expectations, and relationships?
Well, yeah, that's a big question. It's a layered question. I think the only thing I can say right now, because I want to also ask other people, the only thing you should just know is that emotions have a history inside them. They're not feelings. Emotions and feelings are very, very, very different. People of color don't just have feelings about things. They have an emotion or a set of emotions about certain things. Why? Because those emotions date back 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. If, for example, you have anger issues, if you and I were to sit, the first thing I'm going to ask is, are your parents married or divorced? Does your father drink? Were you raised in a community or did you have to raise yourself? Okay? I'm going to go back in time. Why? Because that's how emotions are made. Okay? The thing you need to understand is all of us in this class are looking for one simple thing: stability. You're in school for one simple reason. You want to secure a good job. You want to secure a good paycheck. You want to secure a house that in 20 years' time will be yours. okay? Where you don't have to have an owner who can evict you, raise the rent. You want to own your life as much as possible. That gives you power. Okay. Now, for you to get there, you're going to take classes such as this. You're going to have instructors that you don't like. They're going to create inside you negative feelings. And if you don't like me, if the first day you walk into this class and you had this feeling, I don't like this guy, this is now, we are now into our third week. You're just no longer having a tiny little emotion or a thing, a hiccup called a feeling. You don't like me. Why? You didn't like me day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Now you and I have a history. So when you wake up on Wednesday to come to class, you're going to say, maybe today I should skip my class and stay home in bed. Why? Because you say, if I go to school at 9:30 with this guy, I'm going to hate staying in that room for about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and listening to him screaming, ranting about just ridiculous things. Who the hell does he think he is? And all these other emotions are going to pop up. So emotions have a history. If you want to know what anger is, okay, anger starts with an agitation. It starts with frustration. And what do we do whenever you're agitated or frustrated? Well, you want to fix it. How do you want to fix it? Well, if something doesn't work, you go to your garage, you grab a toolbox, you bring it inside, and you try to fix the stuff. How do you fix a hiccup? Well, your history, the way you think, your habits, your parents, what you've been taught in the past 20 years. These are your toolbox. And what happens the moment you try to overcome confusion, irritation, you realize, well, man, I'm not able to do it. So confusion, okay? Remember, it was just a tiny little hiccup. Agitation, irritation, confusion. Now you get frustrated. At what stage do you get frustrated? You try and you try and you try and you try. It doesn't work. Now you begin to sweat, if not physically, emotionally. Now your companion says, can I get you something? No, fucking leave me alone. Now your volume goes up. You're no longer agitated. You're no longer frustrated. You're no longer confused. You're angry. Because you keep at this thing. You want to remove the wrinkles from whatever it is you're doing. It's not removable. And you're stuck. You become focused on that one thing. And if you can't fix it, you're just going to throw the wrenches down. Your wife says, let me make you some food. Just leave me alone. I'm going to go for a walk. You're going to be undigestible to yourself, to everyone around you for a few hours. And if you got really, really bad issues, you're just not going to be digestible for a long, long time, till you're 40 or 50. So whenever someone comes to you being angry, I mean, the best example I can give you is the life of Mike Tyson. When you see him now at the age of 50-some, he's a beautiful human being. But what helped him from the age 17 all the way to about maybe 27, 28, before he went to prison, was his anger was honed. His coach trained how to use his anger in the boxing ring. And when he could no longer box the way he used to, he took his anger out on just anyone that was available. It's only now where he's able to speak eloquently about some of the issues that all of us go through.
Just a comment. I see how you tie in that emotion has a history. That's Mike Tyson was abused as a kid.
Yeah.
And that's his feelings were never properly disproportionate, so that's why he fights.
And it's because he didn't have a journal. Yeah, Jamila.
Would you rather know you're an influential person or think you know you're
If you have a lot of money in your pocket, Jamila, but you're very casual with money, you don't know the value of money, you just spend it cheaply. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, I've seen a couple of pictures from the Grammy last night, you know, the way people dress. I mean, they're clowns. With all that money and fame and power that they have, they could really make some wonderful changes in society, you know, but they just walk around with trash. So I think as long as you know the value and worth of something and you have earned it by your own sweat and blood, I think that keeps you humble, you know. If on the other hand you just inherited something, it's, you know, it's, I'm guessing you go to church once in a while, you read the Bible once in a while. So the idea that the kingdom of God lives inside someone, right? Which means, could mean the following way. You're not going to be tempted by someone's looks. You're not going to be tempted by someone's eloquence and language. You're not going to be tempted by the way someone dresses. You're going to kind of remove all these layers until you get to the very bottom, what they call the kingdom, to see if there is a God in there. You may find a kingdom of trash. Okay? If you have that ability to kind of cut through all those layers, you could be very, very influential. And as time passes, you say, I have this ability, but I'm going to exercise it on only people I like. Are you going to be biased, prejudiced? Yes. Are you going to be a bully to some extent? Yeah. That may not have answered your question, but that's the best I can do. Yeah.
How do you forget the things you want to forget?
So, there are positives that happen in life that you naturally, organically forget. There are negatives that happen in life that cause a good amount of pain. We are not the sort of animals that enjoy pain very much. So we'll do whatever we possibly can to distract ourselves from pain, to make sure that other people don't see the thing inside us that causes a good amount of pain, because that kind of fouls our image a little bit. We have this cunning ability, and it's just part of just our DNA, who and what we are, that we push down into this dark dungeon all the awful things that have happened to us that cause a good amount of pain and heartache. Once in a while, something happens when this dungeon, the gate opens, and one or two of those events pop up. You're sitting in the middle of a classroom, and remember, whenever you have junk inside you or pain inside you, it's what we call trigger points. Okay? If, for example, you're sitting in this class and everything happens to be fine, but you happen to be an illegal immigrant, Erica's question will trigger you. And all of a sudden, every time there is a noise that comes from the outside, you say, immigration people, right? So you lose focus. These are what we call trigger points. If, for example, when you were a kid, your father looked like me, had a beard like me, it was all gray, and he comes, and the tone of his voice is like me, every time you come to class, okay, you see 10% of me, 90% of your father. Okay? That's just the way we function as human beings. Now, because we have a tendency of forgetting something, not being around it, it means there is no intimacy. Okay? Every time it comes, you try to run away. Okay? The only way that a negative emotion can be cooked is go to Costco. It's the right time now. Buy yourself a tiny little citrus tree. Plant it. Orange tree. And what you realize is that at a certain point during the year, you have these green things, ball shapes. All of a sudden they come out. Okay? It's first flowers, then they become oranges. They're green. You want to pull them, but you can't detach them from the branch. Why? They're raw. If you are patient enough, what happens is the orange, this green orange will turn half green and half yellow. And after 2-3 months, you realize it's just fully orange. And just wait, it just drops. It doesn't need to be pulled. It just drops on its own. And what you have is the branch and the orange attached for a long, long, long time. Okay? If the orange was to say, you know what, the green orange, I want to fall right now, well, you can't fall. But the thing is, no one's going to look at you. No one's going to eat you. No one's going to peel you. They're just going to step on you because you're just no good. Okay? So if there is any pain inside you, the first thing you need to do is understand that, look, it's painful. I haven't seen it and I don't want to be around it. And you haven't been for about 20 years. There comes a point where you say, you know what? This pain that I have dismissed for the past 20 years, it has crapped on everything I touched. Every relationship I walk into, it gets destroyed. Maybe it's time for me to figure out what the hell to do with it. So what you do is you go to therapy. And if you happen to have a good therapist, gradually, he or she will bring up tiny bits of this event or narrative. And if you happen to have a very bad therapist or very bad person you're working with, they'll bring up the entire story and it's too much for you to digest it. So you'll find the bridge and you jump. If you happen to have a really good therapist, they say, you know what? This narrative that you have inside is about 500 pages. Let's just deal with the 2 lines of page number 1. Let's see how you deal with this. And little by little, your stamina to find yourself intimate, having the capacity to deal with this stuff closely, intimately grows. And as you become stronger emotionally, instead of just doing 2 lines, now you can do 10 pages. And one morning, and everybody has a different timetable. One morning you wake up and you say, oh, wow, maybe I should just go see my father. There are no quick solutions to any human problems. It's impossible. Do not be deceived by the American culture, where if you have an issue, just look at it, see a therapist, and 2 weeks later it's finished. It doesn't work that way. Well, listen, it's good to see all of you.
See you too.
Take care of yourselves. Yeah.
People these days are too sensitive and react. What are your opinions? Do you think people react too quickly to little things?
I think if you can be away from people, you should. I mean, not to be around them.
Oh,
Yeah. Thank you. Take good care. Thank you. It's good to see you. Take care of yourself.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.